Welcome to Suwalif Space. Education has always been the foundation of personal and professional success, but the world is changing faster than ever before. New technologies, new careers, and new ways of working are reshaping what students need to succeed. For many people, education is one of the biggest investments they will ever make. So, are universities preparing students for tomorrow? Our guest today is Dr. Belisa Marochi, a political scientist and social scientist whose work spans diplomacy, sustainable development, and international relationship. A professor at Hult International Business School, Dubai, she holds a PhD from Roskilde University, a degree from Brown University, and UC Santa Barbara. She has advised governments and business across the Middle East, Europe, and the United States. Today, we will discuss how education is changing the skills of tomorrow's leaders. Welcome to the show, Doctor.
Thank you for having me, Mohammed.
Thank you. So, in your opinion, what was the biggest change that education went through in the last 5-10 years?
In the last decade, I would say artificial intelligence has really shaken education. I would say that also is on top of having COVID-19 pandemic, but definitely AI has really impacted education. AI was here before, but in the last 5-10 years, we can see how it's changing everything. It's changing how we have to think about higher education, how we have to design the curriculum, how we have to design the student experience. It's also impacting even the role of the educator, I would say. As you mentioned, I've been in education for 15 years or so, and as faculty and teaching, the role of the educator has changed so much, because how are we now going to equip students with the skills they need for this new world? AI is really impacting us, and we've been trying to adapt. We've been trying to make changes really quickly, but still, are we equipped with the skills to make those changes, to make sure that students have what they need for the future? I would say AI is definitely the one. Yeah. But I can also add one thing that AI has done, I think, that is important. It's also given the opportunity for personalized education, right? So this is changing also now, because you can tap into knowledge from anywhere you are in the world. AI can create the opportunity to democratize education in a way, to allow people to gather the skills they need, the knowledge they need from anywhere in the world. So I would say this is really a very special moment in the history of education.
I agree with you. I'm going to give away my age, but I graduated from my bachelor's in 2010. And then when I started my MBA 2 years ago, it's completely different experience. Even though both are in class, I chose to have in class as well. It's a completely different experience, because you have different tools, different way of getting the knowledge. And that is the nice and maybe scary part as well, because you have so much information out there that's so accessible to you. So then, as an educator, how do you add value when all this information is available?
Yeah, I can attest to that from the educator perspective too, that we can see that students are getting the knowledge they need very quickly in the classroom. For assessments also, right? Like now you can write an essay much faster because you can have access to a lot of knowledge. I can see that. I would say that the way we are looking at it in education, we are thinking that the teacher has to be more like a facilitator now, a mentor, or they have to guide conversations. They have to facilitate the learning in a way. I see this as a new way that is coming in. But I also think it's scary, like you mentioned. You said scary, and I find that it is the same in a way, because a lot of what the classroom should do is actually equip students with almost like wisdom to make right choices, right? There is something that needs to happen in the classroom. There should be some learning that goes on still. So
Exactly.
how do we become facilitators, and how do we ensure that students are learning? It's really a puzzle now, and I would say even at the business school, right, at Hult International Business School where I'm at, we spend so much time in all of the faculty meetings and teaching and learning committees and committees after committees and AI committees discussing how can we adapt, how can we create that experience that the student needs. And yeah, a lot of opportunities, but a lot of challenges.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I loved about Hult, is that they did not hide their head in the sand and say, no, don't use AI, it's banned. No, they actually empower you to use it because, let's face it, I mean, it is the way of the future. You use it in the workplace, use it in your daily life. So it's teaching you how to use it, maybe. So let's say that then your part would be to educate people in terms of skills, not the knowledge or the information.
And then the question is what skills, right? I
Yes.
think that's a very good point. But then
Yeah.
what skills do we need? So if we look at the World Economic Forum shows that the skills needed for the future are skills on leadership, right? Are skills on resilience, analytical thinking. These are the skills that are needed. And he also says, like, in 5 years from now, AI will top all of those. But I think that shows that we really need to make sure that students are learning how to think critically, right? The whole experience of higher education has, I really still think so, has to instill critical analytical thinking into the student. That's always been the purpose of higher education. It is to do that, right? That I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree, because some people would say there's lots of material online, there's lots of information online. You want to learn something, you want to get a new skill, you can just access it with the click of a button. But I still feel higher education institutions give you something that you don't get online, you don't get from the internet. It's probably what you've mentioned, is the resilience, the critical thinking. But do you feel, excluding Hult, the other institutions are catching up with this progress?
And we are trying at Hult too, but as you said, it's a learning curve too, because everything is happening so fast, right? I think the role of higher education has always been to instill critical thinking. If we look historically, you can think about even the role of a city, in a way, the role of society. It is to educate us, and we can go back to like antiquity, to philosophy, to look at how historically we've thought about community as a community that keeps learning, right? That's what a city does. That's what a community should do. We have to keep learning and revealing the unknown so we can have progress, right? I think that's what makes us human, to search for progress. And higher education has always been at the center of that.
And I think it's more challenging in Hult, let's say, for example, because you have the MBA students who might be from a different generation than your bachelor's students, who are a completely different generation. So even the way maybe they perceive the knowledge or the training that you give them is different. How do you manage, educating so many different type of people?
Well, I saw that right away when like the generative AI tools became so available, right?
Right.
I'll give you a perfect example of this. I was still teaching in Florida in the US when these tools came up about, like 2022 or so.
Yeah.
And I could see that I would give students a question to discuss in the classroom, and they would run to AI to get the answers, right? At Hult, as you mentioned, we have the executive MBA, the MBA. The students are more mature, and they would still sit and discuss the questions a bit, but we tend to have the risk that people run to AI to get the answer first. And I think this is where it becomes extremely difficult for the educator or the facilitator, whatever our role is, that I guess is changing, because here's where I find it interesting. I think that we have to be able to, as citizens, as students, as individuals, to debate still our thoughts, right? Like, society is only built if we are sitting with our thoughts, opinions, and we debate them. Look at the architecture of cities. Again, I'm going back to that, but look at how everything is built around us. It's built for deliberation. It is built for discussion, for dialogue. Look, we have, from antiquity again, the agora, the open space where we would go and this debate, right? From a coffee shop to a majlis, to a place of faith. All of these places are built so we can have discussions, we can have deliberations. And even the root of the word deliberation has liberate in it, which is actually to weigh, to balance things, like Libra, the sign.
The balance.
Actually,
Correct.
That's my sign. But, Libra is a balance. So, and it's also connection to the word liberate, which is very interesting. But I think the point is that we only really come up with the right answer if we deliberate, if we balance, we weigh in other people's perspectives. And my fear is that if we run to AI for answers, are we going to deliberate or no, right? Are we going to have those discussions, or do we simply find the right answer here and then we are confident we have the right answer, but we didn't have the chance to weigh in? And that's where I find that higher education needs to do that more and more. We need to be able to create the classroom experience, the virtual classroom experience even, as a place of deliberation again, because we risk that AI is taking that away from us. Also, generative AI tools, they give us answers, but they don't tell us necessarily how they got to the answer, right? And this really strips away critical thinking, because critical thinking will be to know, to think with reason, with logic, to try to understand where the evidence is coming from. And here, we don't even know who the author is, how they got to that. Of course, you can prompt, you can go deeper.
Ask for the resource, or ask for
the sources, right?
Yeah.
We can go deeper and prompt and ask more to see where the research came from. But a lot of times we don't have the time, right? So we end up over trusting it in a way that is giving us the right information. So that is another issue.
Definitely. You mentioned one of the main roles of higher education is the critical thinking or debate, let's say. Do you think it is possible to learn these skills in, let's say, the period or the time that the students spend at these institutions?
We must, I think, create opportunities for critical thinking in the classroom, in the education, higher education.
The reason I ask, because some people would say it's a lifelong skill that you learn from experience at work and life with family, friends. So then higher education will not add much, or it will, because of the time span of, compared to your life, then it's not much.
I understand. I think we need both, right? We need higher education, and then we also need practice. And there is a lot of that division also, even in a business school, because sometimes students want practical skills. I want it to be practical. Are we equipping students with practical skills? I would say we need both. A lot of times in the world, I would say, sometimes it's called the real world, which is unfair. It says higher education is not the real world. Well, but usually like at work, right? When
it's practice world.
In the practice world, I think what happens is that there is no time, a lot of times, to consider all of the elements that would require you to be a critical thinker or a wise person, because you're having to make decisions faster, right? At the workplace. You end up not having a lot of the time really to practice.
Yes, yeah.
So I would say you need both. We need theory, right? And theory is not new. Theory has been developed over hundreds of thousands of years, right? If we think of theory as science, we need that. But we need the critical thinking to also question science in a way, because that's how science keeps building. Science only builds if we question it, right? So I would say we really need both. And I will add one thing. What you see is not that higher education is going away because of all of this new technology, for example. We don't see that higher education is going away. What we see instead is that businesses, organizations are asking individuals to learn more at the workplace.
Correct.
You are seeing the rise of what Peter Senge would have called the learning organization. Businesses are putting in credentials. Learning and development has a huge budget now, right? I work with a lot of those organizations myself. Training leaders on how to be more emotionally intelligent, how to be purposeful in their leadership, right? So we see that actually the workplace has to show that leaders can learn rather than taking away learning. So I think that's also a shift that we see in the world.
Yeah. Thank you for making my segue easier for the next question. Because I remember I had a bit of a shock after graduating from my bachelor's and joining the workplace. Because there was a gap that I felt, a big gap actually, between being in the education world for such a long time, because you have the high school and you have the university, and then being in the workplace. So in your opinion, because as you mentioned, workplace also requires you to train, educate, learn things. What is the biggest gap between higher education institutions and workplace?
Oh, there's so many gaps. I can see that. Yet sometimes maybe the gaps were designed for a reason. I think I don't think, like I said earlier, that higher education can match exactly what is needed for the workplace, because then it would be too focused on practice and not on theory, and then we would lose that ability to instill critical thinking. So, but I, as you mentioned, you saw it yourself, and what we see more and more is, I think, asking students then to pick up some of those skills while they're in university. Do we have enough internship opportunities? Do we have apprenticeship opportunities? How can the students apply what they're learning throughout their journey? At Hult, as you know, we bring practitioners to the classroom a lot. We have business challenges, as we call them, where we bring somebody from the industry into the classroom to talk about a problem they're having right now, and we have students work on those problems with them. That is a way of bringing, I would say, practice into the classroom. But I would like to add, especially where we are in Dubai having this conversation, we also need companies to open their doors for more internship opportunities. We need more practical experience too. Yeah. And I think students are so, they're excellent in a way too, as a resource for a company. And sometimes people in organizations are not seeing that so clearly, why they should open their doors to students. Yeah. So, I will use your show for a call, a call to action for our community here in the UAE to really tap into this opportunity that they have their hands. We have some of the best universities, right? Yes. In the country now. It's a very competitive space for university students from all over the world want to come study here. And but we are only going to make also the country a special place for education if we can create those internship opportunities for students, so when they graduate they are ready, right, to join the workspace.
I agree with you 100%. Unfortunately, not many companies do focus on internships, and when they do them, they view them more about doing the mundane, mindless jobs, just dumping them on this fresh student. Just do this and that's it. They don't utilize the opportunity where they can learn from the fresh perspective that the student can bring, and they don't teach them for them to join the workforce in the future.
I just had a conversation recently with somebody from Accenture in human resources, and they were telling me that that's a pain point that they're having now, is that the fresh graduates don't have industry experience, And now a lot of the work that they would have done before can be done by AI, right? So what is the point in a way? What is the fresh graduate bringing? And I think this is where we're going to have to really think differently in higher education, because we're going to have to prepare a fresh graduate that thinks very differently, is not only AI ready, right? So they can jump right in, but they also have to then think very differently and really bring something new, I think, that cannot be substituted easily, or we're going to end up with even a harder time, right? Preparing fresh graduates.
Yes. But I think students face challenge much earlier than that. Let's say, for example, if we talk about degree inflation, because now education is so accessible and you have so many institutions and options. So now people have multiple degrees, and then students will have the difficulty of standing out. As an educator, how do you advise them to stand out in this market?
Yeah, interesting concept about the degree inflation. And I also don't blame people for getting all of those degrees. If you look at the research on OECD, a higher education degree, like a bachelor's degree, will still give you 39-40% higher income than if you don't have a bachelor's degree. So we're looking at 40% globally. And if you have an advanced degree, like a master's or more, it can go up to 80% more than somebody who doesn't have a higher education degree.
Nice.
So
I hope my HR is listening to this.
Yeah, but you see, like, I understand why we need more degrees. If people can get them, I see why they would. And of course, not only, we're not looking at income. We might, this might come with job security. It might come with all kinds of opportunities, even opportunities to immigrate, right? I mean, this is something that also people look for, like education as a pathway to mobility globally, to social mobility. And so I think this is really, really important, right? That education can do that.
So if we talk about the world today, what is the value of a degree? And with so many institutions, so many options, and different prices, of course.
You ask about value, and I love that, because that is really what is important. Like, what is the value of higher education? I'll tell you what I think the value is, and then I'll tell you what the problem is with how we are conceiving higher education. Higher education should be able to give you the bigger picture, right? We want to be wise as leaders.
Right.
And a lot of times, even in philosophy, we'll think about like wisdom as what is needed. A lot of people will think wisdom can only be, like you need to live through experiences to build your wisdom.
You acquire through time and age. You acquire
through time and age and experiences.
Right.
But I would say higher education can develop that wisdom in that time. Why? Because it should be able to give you a bigger picture of things. I'll give you a perfect example, right? Somebody who made this coffee, right? The person who's making chai, the person who's cleaning our dishes, whatever. That you can look at that and say that is just somebody doing the dishes, somebody just making coffee. But if you are a wise person, you would see that that is a much bigger job than just doing that, right? You would see that that person is having impact on so many people around them, on the organization, that person is needed, right? Yet that might have been undervalued, right? But that is needed, and that is essential for society. Mm-hmm. So higher education will be able to give all of the disciplines, in a way, the workers, the students, the ability to connect the dots, right? I'm not just a doctor, an engineer, or an artist. I can see how every single thing we do has impact on society. It's being able to see the societal level, right? So we can actually solve global problems, really. I find that higher education can do that, right? We can build that wisdom then early on by connecting the dots, right? And curriculums have been designed to do that, I would say. Probably not enough. We need to do more. Right. But I would say that's what education can do. That is the value of a degree. You come out as a bigger picture critical thinker. But since you asked about value,
yes.
One problem I think is that we are over focusing on like really the return on investment of
Monetary
education,
value,
the
maybe.
monetary value, right? We are asking, what is the return on investment on my MBA or on my master's or my bachelor's? I understand why we're asking that, but it's much bigger than that. How transformational has the MBA experience been for you, Mohammed?
Oh, a lot. I've changed my way of thinking 180 degree in these 2 years.
And I cannot tell you how many times that has happened, right? Even for me, I'll tell you what happened to me too, because I had already my PhD and everything, and I went back for an MBA myself, and I could see that transformation in myself, and I hear from so many students all the time that they transform in ways that they didn't expect. So that is the problem if you only attach value to that monetary value, right? Because it would transform you in different ways that you did not expect. And you probably learn more about people. You learn more about yourself, right, as a person, than simply at the workplace, because you would have had so many opportunities to
interact with so many different type of people.
Yes, to interact. And so, I think that's really the value of higher education, of a degree. A problem we've been facing in higher education is that we have also seen the privatization of education globally. And what that brings is that the student is not only a learner, but like a customer now. Right? So we in higher education institutions are having to tailor to the customer's needs in a way, in a new way, I would say, that was not embedded in higher education. That is making things extremely difficult, I think, also, because as you know, a customer has needs, and a customer is the paying customer also, and we need to make sure we have good customer service then. And all of that, I think, is also changing in a way the role of higher education. And I think then the value of the degree, in a way, also comes from us realizing that we shouldn't just tailor to the customer in a way, but we have a bigger purpose, a bigger ethos, in education.
Yes.
Right? We are supposed to form a society, really, that keeps learning.
It's the only industry maybe where the customer is not always right.
Oh, good one. That's it. Exactly right. So, is the customer right? Well, how do we actually question that in the classroom, right? That's a very good point, yeah.
But I mean, we can talk about this all day. It's a really interesting topic. But in conclusion, because we've been talking about students the whole time, from an educator to another educator, what would be your one piece of advice?
I would say we need to keep engaging students in a new way. We have to keep learning as educators also. We have to understand that students need credentials, they need diplomas, but they also need knowledge. We need to make sure that the classroom creates that experience for us to give students the knowledge they need. We also need to really think about what we are teaching, and I will add some research that I've done with the dean of Hult, Dean Namrata Kamat, and we just published on this, on like decolonializing the business school, I should say decolonizing the business school. And the idea is that we are trying to see how can faculty actually bring new knowledge to the room. A lot of the way we have equipped students in business schools has been focusing on value, on efficiencies, on growth, profit maximization, right? But we are trying to ask questions now of what other knowledge can we bring? What alternative epistemologies really are we missing? Other ways of knowing. We have always focused on one way that has served businesses, but also, let's just be honest, right? Horrible things have happened by highly educated people, right? They've made decisions engaging in war to financial crises that have impacted us globally. And these are people that have great degrees, right?
Yep.
So clearly there's something wrong with the degree also. So now we're asking, have we over taught, let's say, some ways of knowing and let some other ways of knowing be invisible, right? How do we bring those back in? And it's really, I think, what I would advise educators to do. How do we bring that local knowledge that has been hidden somehow, and how do we bring the human back into it so we don't only focus on efficiencies and productivity? And even with the rise of AI now, we're always talking about, how can we be more efficient, more productive? And I'm like, that's what we've been doing with technology for so long. We've always been asking,
Correct.
how can we be more productive? And is that really the goal of humanity? Is that our purpose as humans, to be productive, right? I think it's more than that.
Yes.
It's also to be productive in the community then. It's not just to think about productivity as an efficiency.
Yeah, to evolve as a human.
To evolve as humans and even to, there's great research on this about like the reproductive even. How do we form families, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you form communities? Not just the productive. There is a over focus on this, I think. And I would say educators need to bring all of that back in, rethinking what we value in education, rethinking what we value in society, really. We value human interactions, we value relationships, we still have to value the environment, all
Correct.
of that. And we really are, in a critical moment to bring all of those back in. And I say back in, sorry, I say bring back in because they are there. They were there originally, right? Actually,
Correct.
I think.
Correct.
We knew that, and there's so much in history that shows that we knew that like if you look at faiths across the world, right? If you look at the way we've built communities, we knew that was important before, but I think we got sidetracked.
I think so.
Yeah, so it's good to bring those back in.
Yes, definitely agreed. What does the future hold for the budding generation ready to take on this world? Have universities equipped them with the tools and skills necessary? Can leadership, resilience, and critical thinking help them navigate this world? Dr. Belisa Marochi answered all of these questions and many more. She shed the light on the future of education. Thank you, Dr. Marochi.
Thank you for having me on the show, Mohammed.
It was a pleasure having you. Thank you so much. Thank you to our listeners, and until next time, stay curious, stay critical, and stay connected.